Welcome to the TNF podcast. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Click on that bell for notifications. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, give us a follow and give us a rating. That would be fantastic. A couple things I want to promote before the show. As you know, my friend Lou Collar from the band Sick of It All has been battling cancer. We have a QR code that I'm going to put up in the show that is directed towards his GoFundMe. Please donate if you can, even if it's $1. Anything will help. Also, my friend Joshua Hurst at the Hardcore Legends Trading Cards, who was on the show a few weeks ago, he's going to be doing some special raffles for a Pete Collar card that has a guitar pick in there. So go on over and check that out. It's for a good cause. I think you'll really like what he's doing. And my friend John Cuccinello has this book, Come Inside and Meet My Punk Rock Family. It's a really cool book that chronicles all the characters that he met within the hardcore scene. He is donating the funds to a good cause. 12% of the proceeds will go to the St. Jude's Children's Hospital. So pick one of those up at revhq.com. I think you'll really like it. One thing I wanted to mention too, we're taking a break from the last show is going to be on December 7th, and then we'll be returning on February 8th, I believe is the date. Got to do some catch up on the audio editing. This is a really involved show, and I'm a little bit behind, and that's my fault. I take responsibility for that, but I want to be able to give you the best experience. If you can't watch, some of you guys listen, so I will go and be in the process of editing all those and posting those periodically. So again, if you want to listen to this show, it's on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Give us a follow and rate it. That would be great too. So, um, all right. So, and happy Halloween, everybody. This is going to air before that, but um, I love this holiday. I have a blast. I don't really get to dress up very often because I'm old and I don't get to go out very much. But anytime I can, it's always fun. So, but we're not going to do this the whole show, so don't worry about it. But all right, so my next guest today, really awesome dude. I was really pleased to hear that he was a listener of the show. When we had reached out to him, he said that he was a fan, and I was like, "Oh, that's amazing!" Because I'm a fan of all your projects. I think he has been one of the most influential uh, figures within the hardcore scene. He's been in some really incredible acts from New Jersey, the bands Endeavor. He also filled in and did an album with For the Love of. He was in a project called Try, Fail, Try, and the amazing Burnt by the Sun. And he's actually got a project that he did later on that I didn't know about. It's called River Black. I just checked that out here recently. Awesome stuff. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege to bring to you Mike Olender. Thanks so much for being here, Mike.
Oh, pleasure to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I couldn't have done that whole show with that mask on. I don't think you would have been able to take me seriously, and I can't take myself seriously. So
It would have been
I'll
hard.
spare everybody.
That would have been a first for me for sure. For being interviewed by that, yeah. And then I can imagine how sweaty you'd get under that mask after about an hour or so.
You're like,
Oh man, you got everything right there.
This one I got the machete, and I did the that one back there, the Friday the 13th Part 3. I had somebody build me an actual harpoon gun, which was cool. Like, and yeah, I love being able to do that, but yeah, it makes doing the show kind of difficult. So what's been going on with you, man? I understand you're up in New Jersey at present.
At present, I am. Yep. Just wrapping up a great weekend. went to go see, me and my significant other love to frequent Broadway shows up in New York City. And so
Oh,
we just saw the show, Maybe Happy Ending, which I knew
okay.
very, very little about. But it was pretty awesome. It was actually this year's Tony award-winning show for best show. And it was great. Yeah, that's a pretty common thing that we do is go to those kinds of shows. A little bit of theater, a little bit of dinner sometimes in the city is nice. Get to enjoy the proximity where she lives to the city. So that's what's most lately been on my calendar. Yeah.
That's very cool. I'm
Mhm.
not actually a big musical guy. I do like The Phantom of the Paradise. Have you ever seen that, the Brian De Palma movie?
I have not. No.
Oh, I think you'll really enjoy it. It's got Jessica Harper. I don't know if you've ever seen Suspiria. She's in it, and then Paul Williams. And it's basically about the Phantom of the Opera, but it's done in like a 70s rock opera style, and it's a lot of fun. I think you'd really enjoy it.
I'm gonna have to check that out because that is our favorite show. Is Phantom of the Opera. We went to was it a year and a half ago? We actually went out to London to see the show in Phantom after it closed on Broadway,
Oh wow,
and we're planning on seeing it again in Salt Lake City in April. So
oh, cool.
yeah, big fans of that. So anything Phantom related, I'm into it. Yeah, I hear you on the musicals thing, man. I never thought I'd ever see myself interested in musicals. I was always had kind of a back pocket interest in theater. Like I just always thought, wow, people who do that, who are in the performing arts, and they get up and they do it live every single night. That's just something I always found was intriguing. But the whole musical, singing the story along, I was like, yeah, especially as a teenager, no interest in that at all. And now here I am, man, 50. You appreciate talent where it is,
Yeah,
and it's a lot of fun. I love it. So, in fact, right now I've got a Les Mis sweatshirt on, along with
I
the
noticed
turmoil.
that.
Along with the
Yeah,
turmoil T-shirt, we got the Les
yeah.
Mis sweatshirt on. So,
What a juxtaposition right there. Yeah, for
well,
sure.
kind of like you balancing, a Krishna consciousness with your love for horror. So,
Yeah. Well, and a lot of people will say on that, they say, "Oh, the Hare Krishnas are like peace-loving people," and I'm like, "Have you seen our artwork? Like, if you're familiar with Cro-Mag's Best Wishes, Lord Nishingadev tearing apart uh, uh, Hiranyakashipu, who was like this demonic king, and it's a really violent
brutal. Yeah.
it's brutal. Yeah, I'm like, you guys don't know us that well, so but no, in relation to that, with the performance stuff, I actually did a musical when I was in high school. It was called Once Upon a Mattress, because I come from a performance background, and it's basically a musical version of The Princess and the Pea or whatever. But after that, I never wanted to do musicals. Like, I studied acting in college, and they're like, "Do you want to try out for the musical?" I'm like, "Nah, no, I'm good." Like, it's
Huh.
just not really my bag. But I have seen a few that I can appreciate. I really think on Les Mis too. Like, I saw the film version of that, the one with Russell Crowe and
Mhm.
Anne Hathaway. I watched it on a plane because I'd watched every other movie. It was on a flight to India. Yeah, that's where it was. And I actually kind of liked it. I was like, this is not bad, but I hear a lot of people didn't really like it. Have you seen it?
I did. I actually saw it right before I saw the show because I'd seen Les Mis everywhere. And I'll be honest, I'm not really a fan of like period films. Like I see movies or stories where people are like cold and wet and like hungry. And I'm like, man, that's miserable. I don't want to watch that for 2 hours. Like I just generally have no interest in that. But I was like, all right, Les Mis, it's a classic. People absolutely adore it. I have to see it. So I always do some homework before seeing a show because you can't. It's really hard to understand a lot of times what people are singing, and to be able to follow the story. So I'll always read the synopsis, what is going on scene by scene before I see a show. In this case, it was really easy being able to see the film, and I thought it was an amazing story. I thought it was really well done, and watched it with the subtitles, so I know exactly what the hell they were saying the whole time. And then when I saw the show, we saw it at what do you call it, in DC. What's the name of the theater? The one that was just renamed.
Uh, I'm not
I don't know.
sure.
Kennedy Center. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
And so and it was amazing. It was amazing. So it was so good at like that. We got to do the sweatshirt with this one. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I hear you.
Mm.
I love the story too. I think it's really intriguing because, Javert is just so hell bent on destroying Jean Valjean, like for something kind of petty,
Mhm.
and I thought that just that whole premise itself was kind of intriguing. I do appreciate too. I don't know if you're a Star Trek Deep Space Nine fan, but there was a guy on the show. His name was Commander Eddington, and he used to work for the main guy, Captain Cisco, and then he kind of turns rogue and starts helping this group of people that are like fighting against the Cardassians or whatever. I'm really nerding out. I'm really tipping my nerd hat right now. But there's all these allegories to Les Mis and Jean Valjean and Inspector Javert and stuff. And I don't know. I don't know if you've ever seen the show, but I think you'd probably like it. There's a lot of like classical references in there. So
Yeah, who knows? You never. I've surprised myself a few times as I get older. You just appreciate things that are interesting, and whether it's yeah, any type of art, really,
yeah,
because you know how it is, man. Like I think once you get past 40, it's hard to to get excited about stuff. It's not like when you were 15 or 16 and you're discovering things and you got your friends and you're becoming an adult, and you're in more control of your life now, and it's really easy to get caught up in things. And then you get older, you're in the grind, you're like, yeah, what's this? Okay. Like,
yeah.
so it's nice to be surprised every now and then with something that you weren't expecting.
Do you find yourself getting locked into here's something that I deal with. I listen to the same albums that I listened to when I was like 16 or 17. I watch a lot of the same movies that I watched as a youth, and it's like this comfort zone to where I wouldn't say I'm as bad as it as some of like my friends or something, but I do find myself going back to things that are kind of nostalgic as a again, like a feeling of comfort. Do you find yourself getting locked into that sometimes?
100% to a fault, to the point of being really indecisive when it comes to picking something to watch on any of the streaming services. First off, it's like, okay, I got to choose which of the streaming services to use to look at first, right? And then it's going through, and you spend 20 minutes going through. No, 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 no. I'd be like, I'm just gonna watch some old Miami Vice, man. Like,
That's a great show.
oh, it is, man. The first two
Yeah.
seasons are like really, really, really great. They really
Yeah.
were exciting and redefined television. And of course, they helped define what the 80s were for a lot of people retrospectively now. And good story. I mean, and edgy, man. There were some issues in some of those episodes that would be even controversial today.
Yeah.
That were, I think of the episode Evan. If those of you who are watching, look up that episode, season one. I think it's the last, might be this last or second last episode of the season, but deals with LGBTQ issues in a way that was like really for 1985. That was like huge the way they approached it. So yeah, good stuff. But anyway, yeah, I definitely hear you on that. Like, and it is about comfort. It's about like that sense of let my mind create those synapses, bring me back to that point of comfort where things were easier to understand, they were more manageable. They're not a threat because I've already lived through them. And then of course this is fiction and it's a bit it's safe. But yeah, comfort, that's the key word there, I think.
Yeah. I'm not familiar with that episode. I don't even think I completely finished the first season because it's one of those shows that's so elusive. Like it will land on a streaming service and it will be free. And I wasn't really that
Yeah.
able to access it back in the day because I was super young when it was on. It's funny, actually. I have a funny story. Whenever they had like one of the commercials on TV or something, and somebody went up behind somebody and tried to asphyxiate them with a plastic bag. And I remember my mom came home from the grocery store and I took a plastic bag, I put it around my head. I was like, Mom, it's like Miami Vice. She was like, what are you doing? And she like took it off my head. So
Oh
so
man.
I never got to finish the yeah. I was a fucked up kid, but I never got to finish the season, so I'll definitely have to see if I can find that and check that out. One of my favorite moments was whenever, and spoiler alert if anybody's listening, Crockett's buddy, I think it was the first episode actually, betrays him, you know, because he's on
Oh
the
yeah, yeah,
payroll of, and like, you know,
yeah.
they surround his house like with his family inside and stuff, and then he's like, he's just so emotionally distraught. Like Don Johnson just like, he brings it, man. Like he was on his A game for that episode. And then afterwards it cuts away and him and Tubbs are driving in the car and it's playing Phil Collins in the air tonight. Like that's just like it's just like prime storytelling and TV making. Like Michael Mann, he just knew what was up.
Mike
He had it. Yeah.
Michael Mann is the man. And I know people probably want to hear us talk about music too,
Sure.
but but if folks can
We'll get
indulge
to
us
it.
for 10 more seconds, yeah, he he's that like Miami Vice, Heat. There's a Heat 2 coming out. There's a Heat 2 book that's out,
Yeah.
which is a great read. Anything that Michael Mann's associated with is just it's very tasteful, very
Yeah.
thoughtful, and he's a smart guy, man. Like he's such a studious producer. He really does a lot of homework, and just interviews with him you can find on YouTube talking about some of his films and his approach is
Yeah.
they're inspiring, because you see, wow, here's somebody who really poured themselves into their career, and has a lot to show for it. Yeah, some really great films.
I saw the Miami Vice remake, the one with
Hmm.
Colin Farrell and Jamie Foxx. I don't know what you thought about it. Like I was kind of like, it's a little too modern.
Hmm.
You know, like you said, it's the original series kind of had its finger on the pulse of the '80s, and I just couldn't really get into it. I don't know how you felt about it.
I couldn't stand it when I refused to see it when it first came out, and then I did reluctantly see it, and I was that, you know what, if you don't think of it as like Miami Vice, you're not comparing it to the old one, it's not a bad movie. And then it's
Yeah.
actually one of those ones that has actually become kind of a cult classic. In the last handful of years, there are groups and fan groups and stuff that have popped up that really love the film. And if you go back and watch it now with a clear set of eyes and a clear mind, it's pretty. I mean, I like it.
Okay.
It's one of the few movie posters I have, actually, I bought in recent years, of being like, you know what, it's a good film. So I'll only watch it in the summer though. So
Yeah. One more and we'll get into it. To Live and Die in LA. Have you ever seen that? That was one that I thought was a Michael Mann movie, but it was actually William Friedkin.
no, no, no. I know of it. William Friedkin, of course, French Connection, of course,
Yeah.
of that fame. Never saw it, but I know of it though. Yeah.
It feels like a Michael Mann movie. Like
Hmm.
it's good. I highly recommend it to anybody that's listening too. But all right, so let's start with the origin story. I know from listening to a few interviews that you did that you were a thrasher guy, and that's
Hmm.
how a lot of the people on this show have been exposed to hardcore and punk rock music. But let's go back even before that. What was your first remembrances of music? What did you have playing on in your household when you were growing up? Did you have any family members that played music? Did you play in any sort of high school bands? And then what was your first non-metal and non-hardcore concert? And then obviously the Thrasher connection, well, that's how you segged into it. What was your first hardcore and punk rock show?
Hmm.
I know that's a weighty question.
Yeah. So going back, so music was definitely in the house. The family wasn't musical with instruments. We had a piano, nobody played it, like except for maybe like holidays. Um, I took piano lessons for like 5 minutes when I was, 7 or 8 or something. We had an acoustic guitar, nobody played it, but music was always on in the house. My dad, let's see, a couple pieces here. My dad was born in 1940, so he was a teenager throughout the 50s. He grew up in Bayonne, New Jersey, which is a very working class city across the water from Queens. And he was a very like typical, greaser kid, slicked hair, leather jacket, boots, and him and all his buddies were into doo-wop. And always heard that. They heard, they used to call it the old, the oldie station back in the 80s, because it was 30 years old at that point. But always heard it. We were doing yard work. If we were washing the car in the driveway, there'd be a boombox with doo-wop going. Um, my dad was just, reliving bits of his past, nostalgic attraction he had to that, and got to know something from that. Also learned a bit about jazz from my dad. He didn't listen to jazz much, but if we'd be up like late night, flipping through, see PBS or something, and there'd be a modern jazz band playing or something, he'd leave it on for a little bit and tell me what it was, and this is what this guy's doing, and hey, they're playing this song for the first time. This is called improv, and that type of thing. And that was cool. And a little fun fact too: the first piece of vinyl I ever got was a big band compilation record set, which I still have. Had like Sonny Rollins and stuff on it. But anyway, there was that. My mom, I grew up in a pretty evangelical Christian home, and so my mom listened to a lot of like soft Christian rock, that type of stuff. And then my siblings, I'm the baby of 5 kids, and they're all considerably older than me. So they're 12, 11, 10, and 7 years older than me. And they were all of them pretty much were into music. My oldest sister, 12 years older than me, and I'm especially thinking early 80s here. Definitely into like the Cars, Men at Work. She introduced me to Bruce Springsteen, and Bruce was from our part of Jersey. He was from our county, so mid 80s. I mean, that was just like huge. And then also Dire Straits. I remember she had Brothers in Arms on cassette, and that for me was a really significant piece of music, because that everyone knows Money for Nothing, that opening riff of Mark Knopfler's guitar. That was easily the first like obsessive moment I remember as far as music goes, where I was like constantly rewinding and playing and rewinding like hundreds and hundreds of times, hearing that riff. It just gave, it spoke to something in me. I just, it really resonated with me, that energy. Aside from that, my other siblings, not so much. I had a sister who was really into the Osmonds for some reason, Donnie and Marie. Like, I never quite understood that. But the real big thing, I think, was my oldest brother, Bob. He's 10 years older than me, and he was into Talking Heads. And he tells the story as he got into the Heads because he liked the song Burning Down the House, bought Speaking in Tongues. My dad overheard him listening to it, and he's like, "What is this crap? Turn it off." And he was like, "Oh, Dad doesn't like this? Great. I'm going to go buy all their albums." And so he built up his little tape collection. And then when I turned 8, he turned 18 and went into the Marine Corps and asked me to look after his tape collection. And so at that point began my ritual every evening of putting on a Talking Heads tape by the boombox near my bed and going to sleep. And I was into it, like genuinely into it. In fact, little fun fact, when I go back to visit my parents up in Connecticut, which is where they live now, I have my old toy box, and I have some of my old school stuff. I literally have old notebooks from 4th and 5th grade where I have like Talking Heads albums, like scribed onto the notebooks and stuff. But what was important to me back then was, and I didn't realize it then, but thinking about it now as I look back, that was really significant, because getting into the Heads, because it was the first time I realized you could be into something that was different and alternative to what everybody else around you was into, and it was okay. Because to me, my brother Bob was like the coolest thing. I worshipped him, and anything he was into was automatically cool. And so, 4th grade or whatever, 10 years old, 1983. I mean, what 10-year-olds are listening to Talking Heads? Nobody. Everyone was listening to like Michael Jackson, And then when they would give me a hard time for it, I'd be like, "No, man, you don't know what you're talking about. My brother Bob's into this, so it's cool." And I had a real confidence about it, I remember back then, hence me writing it all over my notebooks and stuff. And again, I didn't realize it then, but it was a way of me kind of standing up to the crowd in a way with something that I thought was cool and interesting. From there, music, you mentioned like live music. We really didn't go out much. Certainly not to concerts and stuff. The most we got was live music. There was this restaurant called Briotes. It was like an Irish tavern with like great food and live music on weekends. And we'd see them bands do like covers and stuff. And my dad loved dance. He'd be out there like owning the dance floor, like he was so into it. So I got to enjoy it. It was interesting. I remember hearing like, wow, they're covering that, Huey Lewis song. I know what it sounds like on the radio. Here's what it sounds like with different people doing it live. But the first like real concert I went to, I'm pretty sure was Russ Taff, who was maybe still is even around, I don't know, but he was like a contemporary like Christian rock artist who I think he had a couple mainstream hits, kind of like Amy Grant. Um, and we went because again, I came from a household of faith, and so they that was the first real concert I remember going to where there were a lot of people. And I remember I enjoyed it. I thought it was cool. I thought it was like I was familiar with some of the stuff because it being played like in the car with my mom and stuff. And I remember hearing like, oh wow, like live, it was interesting. And I remember going back and listening to some of it afterwards, some of the songs I heard live, and kind of mentally comparing um, what the differences were. Wasn't like into it, didn't like listen to Russ Taff, but it was still like, okay, my family's going, so here's what my experience was going to be. Music for me began to become more personal, kind of transitioning from the Talking Head stuff. Not long after my brother went into the Marines, honestly. My I was in fifth grade, and this we get a new kid in class. His name was George. Rest in peace. He's no longer with us. And he was turning everybody's heads because he had, this kind of homemade, kind of half mohawk, half mullet. He had a jean jacket, like with, patches and buttons, and he had bleach spots. He poured bleach on his jacket, and he like wrote band names with like a felt pen or something. And he had a pair of Vans and a skateboard. And like, 1984, 85, like he didn't have like a little plastic skateboard like my sister had in the garage, but like a real skateboard, like a pro model that cost like $100, and like here I am to like, a kid who's 11 years old. What could be cooler in the mid 80s than like a real life punk rock kid with a skateboard? We were all fascinated with him. So he was seated right in front of me, and we got to know each other, and we became friends and started hanging out. And he came from kind of a broken family. He lived with his mom in an apartment, like literally across the highway from where we were. And my family kind of took him in. Like after school, he'd come over, we'd hang out, he'd have dinner over and stuff. And I learned about skateboarding. He lent me his thrashers, and he was the one to kind of explain, like, yeah, this is what skaters listen to, And for people listening now who are like under 45, that connection between skating and punk and hardcore, that was like part of the package back then. Like if the same back then, skating was very underground. It was very much considered to be like a rogue activity. And it seemed like the same people who were attracted to punk and hardcore or to metal were also attracted to things like skating, like more extreme stuff. And so I saw that connection. He'd explain to me, like here's who Suicidal Tendencies are, and here's who Dead Kennedys are, and here's Black Flag, and these bands. And I remember Suicidal and Dead Kennedys were the ones that he was the most interested in. And so I kind of carry that forth. And I was again just kind of fascinated. I wound up getting my own skateboard, and was getting a bit deeper into it. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I was I was kind of in my own way trying to find the sound that I was looking for, because I wasn't in like Dead Kennedys. I didn't understand the lyrics. Jello's lyrics were way too sophisticated and sarcastic for me at 12, 13 years old. I didn't appreciate that for years later. And then, some of the more harder stuff, I was genuinely afraid of like bands like Slayer. I mean, coming from like a Christian home, that was like a no-no, So I was like, that scared the hell out of me. I'm not playing that in the house. And then other stuff like, Sex Pistols was, it was cool, but like I didn't get into the whole nihilistic F the world, let's get drunk and throw up and roll around on the ground type of nonsense. You know, it just seemed to me to be like, that's not who I am. I'm not like, I'm attracted to the energy of the music, but not the message and not that culture. And it wasn't until um, the summer of 1989 when all of that changed, when I was introduced to Gorilla Biscuits. Start Today had just come out, and this guy, Mike, who's a bit older, I'd gotten a bit better at skating and kind of graduated up to skating with the older kids at that point. And as soon as I heard it, man, I was like, this is me, man. Like this is the sound. These people look like me. They're not wearing costumes. Because like, remember like hair metal and stuff, people were into it and be like, I listened to some of it, but even like as for me as like a 12-year-old kid, I was like, this is corny, man. Like these guys are wearing makeup and hairspray and the pouty faces and all that shit. Like it was
Wow.
just stupid to me, you know? It's like, okay, that's not the answer, but here are people who look like me. This is the sound I'm into. I'm looking at the back of the record, and the back of that album has got, it's a live shot, and it's got Civ standing on the edge of the stage like this, and you see the back of him. And I swear, by the back of him, he looked just like my brother Bob. So like all these stars are aligning, and then you open up the record and you listen to the lyrics, and or you read the lyrics, and you're like, dude, this is about being a good person. This is
Mhm.
social responsibility. This is anti-racism. This is straight edge. This is who I am, man. Like this is this energy, but I don't need to change who I am to conform to it. This is made by people like me for people like me. And then
Already
immediately it was
there.
like, dude, this is me. This is like identity crisis of being a young teenager has been resolved. I am a straight edge. I'm a skater. I am a straight edge kid. I am a hardcore kid. Like this is who I am, and this is the community that I want to be a part of. Sorry, I know that was super long winded, but that was the
No,
story.
no. And that's absolutely how I felt. Was I didn't do drugs. I was a weird kid, but I wasn't so weird as to, I'm with you on the whole hair metal thing. That was something that I never ever and still don't really appreciate. Like some people, no man, you gotta listen to Poisons, blah blah blah. And I'm no, just stop. Don't even try to sell me on this. I didn't like it then. I'm not gonna like it now.
Yeah.
And so I totally understand where you're coming from. The biggest one for me was Stretch Armstrong, that
Huh.
positive hardcore vibe. I'm a little bit younger. I really loved the fact that those guys were educators and were just all about, like you said, trying to live a positive life. I was not a drinker or a drug user, and I just really kind of aligned with that and identify with that. There was a few things I wanted to mention though, as far as like contemporary Christian music. That was kind of something that I was exposed to as well. I remember my church took me to go see Carmen at a young age. Do you remember Carmen?
No, no.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna have to show you some Carmen videos later. It
Yeah.
was just kind of goofy, but uh, and one more thing about the Talking Heads. Have you ever seen True Stories,
Oh yeah.
the David Byrne movie? Yeah.
Hmm.
What'd you think of it?
It's been a long, long time since I've seen it. I need to revisit it.
Hmm.
I remember thinking it's not what I thought it was going to be, but it was interesting. For me, I figured if I'm going to see anything Talking Heads related, it was always Stop Making Sense. Of course, the live album, which
Hmm.
was pretty amazing the way it progresses and stuff. But yeah, not a too probably time for me to revisit it. Maybe I'll appreciate it in a different way.
Yeah, it's weird. It's quirky, just kind of like Talking Heads.
Just like him, yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Wearing the big suits and stuff.
yeah.
Do you feel like your attraction to hardcore, and you had mentioned that with Slayer you found that to be kind of intimidating, having grown up in a religious family. So with Gorilla Biscuits they kind of put forth a positive image. So would you say that it's safe to assume that you were kind of more attracted to the aesthetic and the edginess of it, but not really so much as a reaction to your like religious upbringing, because that seems like something that your family would have kind of been in alignment with and would have been kind of proponents of like a clean lifestyle and positivity.
Yeah, it's, there's no, it's kind of hard to say. I think, it was a combination of things for sure, because sonically things like Slayer were still too hard for me. Like I didn't want to hear crazy guitar solos and stuff. And, they had their own costumes and stuff. I mean, granted, they weren't, they were wearing dark makeup and scary stuff, not like the, Cosmo models or whatever of the hair bands.
Right.
But then really the symbolism and all that dark, imagery and stuff that came with Slayer was, for me, just at that point, it was years later before I kind of understood, like, these guys aren't Satanists. This is sort of an image, and it goes along with the
Catholics.
music and stuff, right? Yeah, Catholics, right? Exactly. It's kind of interesting. So, but at the time I didn't understand that, or I was just like, no, that's not me. Um, my parents definitely did not embrace hardcore though, because for them, like, they didn't understand it, and though it was clean, positive music, I mean, there was, profanity in it, and there was of course, the rituals of hardcore and punk rock shows of hard dancing and stage diving and all that type of stuff. And um, there were also, as time went on, this is getting a little bit far ahead, but as time went along, as my involvement in hardcore continued to develop over the years, I really had started to embrace the more political hardcore, and not so much the youth crew, straight edge scenes. And that included critiques of organized religion. And so I had stopped going to church, had considered myself to be an agnostic, and then at one point an atheist, and then things kind of evolved, kind of almost not quite full circle, but come back around years later to some degree. But yeah, so they were very suspicious of it. They didn't understand it. It led to some real struggles with me and my parents, in particular with my dad, and stuff, where I actually wound up moving out. I know Carl Severson from NORA runs Ferret Records. I actually moved into his house when I was 18, and lived there just because of things that just, we were just not, on the level with each other so much. But so there was a lot of misunderstanding of what hardcore was, just because of the way it sounded. And again, kind of like comparing that from doo-wop, to doo-wop, you kind of understand, even though that was the edgy music of the 50s, you know, fast forward to stuff coming out in the late 80s and 90s, it was just a bridge too far. And so there wasn't appreciation in the way that you might have thought. They kind of understood what straight edge was, and they kind of understood it in concept. But again, as time went on and I started to get more political, that's when things became much more challenging.
So, with the attraction to political hardcore, you had mentioned that you grown up in New Jersey, and New Jersey to me seems like a really eclectic scene because you've got your like
Yeah.
Fury of Fives, you got your E Town Concretes, but then also you've got your Dillinger Escape Plans and stuff that's completely out in left field, and Nora as well.
Mhm.
Um, with Endeavor, was that your first official band, or did you have any sort of proto bands before that?
It took me a while before we actually had a group of people calling ourselves Endeavor. It had started initially. Um, I knew after I had gone to my first hardcore show, which I think that was one of your questions earlier on. I didn't get to it. It was Vision and Release. Release was Rob Fish's first hardcore band. That was shortly after I had gotten a listen of I'd been exposed to Gorilla Biscuits. So that would have been right when I started high school, the fall of 1989. And immediately I knew, once I actually got to see what a real hardcore scene looked like, I knew, like, this is a community. This isn't, you're just going to see a band as a spectator, but the band is hanging out with us and they're dancing with us. And we're talking about skateboarding in between songs or in between bands. And, it was like awesome, like it was absolutely mind blowing. And I had some older friends who were there who were kind of showing me their around and the do's and not what not to do's and introducing me to people and stuff. I knew soon after, because I didn't play an instrument, that I wanted to sing in a band. And so I had started. My dad had a record player, a stereo set in the living room, an old one that had a little microphone you could plug into. It was like sort of pre-karaoke type.
Mhm.
And a lot of times hardcore records had instrumental tracks. And so I would write my own lyrics and I would sing through the mic with the microphone through the speakers, and I would record it with a boombox in the room. And so I kind of had my own little DIY, one person band, where I was writing lyrics and kind of writing my own songs, not really sharing with them with anybody aside from like Carl and maybe one or two other people. But it was like getting started. And this guy, Rob, who was 2 or 3 years older than me, he kind of mentored me in a lot of He was one of the people at that first show who was like showing me around and stuff. Um, he and I tried to start a band, and that didn't happen. And he wound up introducing me to this guy, Adam, who he had been in a hardcore band or two. And he was doing this project where they were looking for a singer. And they suggested me, and so I went and I tried out. And I remember I tried out to a No Escape song, which was awesome. And we were like, "Yeah, if you're in, let's do it. Let's do this band." That didn't last long, though. I think we started writing our own material. It was very, very short lived. I think one of the kids maybe went off to college or something. I was a sophomore in high school at this time. And then the guy, Adam, he was like, being that it fell apart, he's like, I know some other people. And we wound up meeting up with a couple other guys who had been in some other bands, one of which was Dan Cavalieri. He used to be in Absolution. And that was really at that point, that lineup was the beginning of what would become Endeavor, which was like junior year, senior year of high school, when that actually got started. So, and then for me, like the lane, deciding to take like the political lane, at that point, that's where my mind was. That was the type of hardcore I was the most interested in. Like Downcast and Struggle were probably the most influential bands for me at that time. In addition to like Four Walls Falling, that was like really, really like big, and bands that were just writing songs about not just politics, or in general, um, but about really specific topics, really, really dialing it in. And for me, I like, this is where my mind is. There's not a lot of this going on right now. And this is where I can make a contribution to hardcore. Because that's all I wanted to do. Like, I didn't want to get girls standing on stage, you know, singing. It wasn't about that. It wasn't about just doing a band for the sake of it. It was, I love the hardcore scene. This is where I belong, and I want to make a contribution to it. And this is my way I can do it, is by singing in a band. And a way I can be unique is by being focused on political issues and having that be part of the message orientation of the band.
I noticed what you had said at the beginning of that video. It wasn't part of the introduction segment, but you had mentioned something about you may not even necessarily agree with a band's politics or ideologies, but just so long as it makes you think, that's what's important. And I really thought that that was a real, like, profound and very mature statement. We live in these kind of polarizing times. Do you feel that communication between people that may have diametrically opposed viewpoints is important? Because it's so easy nowadays just to get on the internet and mudsling and name call, just dish out the ad hominems and whatnot. Do you feel like maybe we should kind of, as a society, uh, bring down the temperature a little bit and, like, hey, let's have a conversation about this? Maybe we could find some sort of collective mutual beliefs. Maybe we could find some sort of common ground. Do you think that that's important?
It's absolutely important, and our society really, really needs it right now. For the first time in a really, really long time. I know a lot of people are saying this is the worst it's ever been. This is the worst since the Civil War. Like, the country's been very, very divided and very even violent with each other many times throughout our history. This isn't really new. What's really new now is how it's happening with social media and these, the algorithms and the bots and all this stuff that's not even human is contributing to this. And then you factor in where
Mhm.
things are going to be with AI, and it could be just exponentially worse. So we really have a responsibility to better understand each other. And that part you mentioned at the very beginning about thinking, I said that line about, you know, you don't have to agree with the issues, but if it gets you to think, that's what the important part of it is. And I share that because that was shared with me. That guy Rob I mentioned before, who was kind of like a mentor to me, he was the one who inadvertently made me kind of shift my mind towards politics and away from like the youth crew straight edge stuff. Um, he gave me, there were two things actually. One was he lent me a copy of No Answers fanzine, which was a fanzine done by Kent McClard, who runs Ebullition Records.
Mm.
Very influential on me, great zine, very highly political. I borrowed it from him because it had a Judge interview in it in like 1990 or something. And I was like, I want to read the Judge interview. But he also interviewed Downcast, who was, very super hyper political. And so there was that. I found that to be very interesting. And then the other was he gave me a dubbed copy of Jello Biafra, um, his spoken word No More Cocoons. And when he gave it to me, he said, "You may not agree with everything he says. I don't, but it'll make you think." And that became, I listened to that thing probably hundreds of times. I was cutting the lawn at my house. I'd have my Walkman on and I'd be listening to that. I was so fascinated by how he was, the singer of Dead Kennedys, and he was, extremely intelligent, thoughtful person who was very well aware of what was going on in politics and in the world. Very educated, self-educated, didn't rely on mainstream media, didn't trust the major political parties, and had the message of become the media. And I just found the whole thing to be very, very fascinating, and it really helped inspire me to make Endeavor be part of that media, to be part of that alternative media sphere where people get exposed to different ideas and real specific things, like especially some of the last Endeavor record has got really specific songs, like welfare reform and the School of the Americas and like stuff that a lot of people weren't thinking about or talking about much, certainly not in the hardcore scene. And for me, it was like, learn about this. This is an injustice going on. And even if you don't agree, if we can have a conversation about it, then that's what my point was, is for us, because that's what made me who I am, is being challenged, and being a thoughtful person, understanding the world that you live in.
I'm with you on that. I think that the hardcore scene is really great for that because we can all kind of come together for our mutual appreciation of heavy music or whatever. But there is kind of it's like a town square almost to where there is like a bulletin board with like different oh, come to this political gathering or something like that, and everybody's kind of free to express their own ideas. I feel like mostly. I think there are some kind of lines that are drawn here and
Sure.
there, but I'm with you in that I think that Americans specifically, I think we all kind of want the same things. I
Mhm.
think we just kind of have a different vision of how to achieve those things. And I think that's where things are lost in translation is that we feel that there's different ways of going about achieving those goals. So I think that's where a lot of the strife and the animus comes from is just the execution of said ideas, like how do we get to where we need to go.
That's right. I would agree completely. And I think for a long time, the political divides, not just in America, but across the country, have been, defined most popularly or most commonly in terms of left and right, right?
Right.
Which was literally a physical thing in the British Parliament where people were fighting with each other. So they literally
Right.
separated you guys on this side, you guys on this side, so you can't fight with each other.
Yep.
What's interesting now is that we have, despite all the political divisiveness and the lack of civility that's out there, we're actually at a very different time because those lines are actually of what is left and what is right are actually being very blurred because of the populism that's both on the left and the right.
Yes.
And one of the things that I have learns both not only with getting a degree in political science for whatever that's worth, but working, having a career 25 plus years now, working in the political sphere, working, in the advocacy world. You understand that there are certain issues where that left and right spectrum, the political spectrum, isn't just linear where they just both go in their own separate directions, but actually they're more like lines of latitude where they go around like a globe and then they meet on the other side. And you're seeing a lot of that with a lot of issues right now. You're seeing it on economic issues. You're seeing a lot of the distrust in the financial institutions and things like that have really screwed over, especially working people in this country for a long time. There being a lot of agreement. You see a lot of that discussion around like prescription drug pricing and things like that, right?
Mm.
You see it even the debate around Israel and Gaza and what's going on there. Even that sort of left wing, very much focused on the issue of human rights and genocide in Gaza. And on the other side, you see the issue from the America First side saying, wait a minute, we shouldn't be funding this awful stuff that's going on there.
Right.
And there's a lot of agreement, and there's some podcasts, some really interesting interviews with people who normally would be, duking it out on issues, finding a lot of agreement. So in some ways, we have a lot of reason for hope because there's some agreement that isn't quite acknowledged, certainly not by our mainstream media as of yet. But unfortunately, because of the way our campaign finance system works, where politicians are rewarded for being controversial, um, and the incentives that they have to do things that further the divide, it makes a real challenge for people to be able to see clearly the opportunities that are there. But make no mistake, man, we do need a better understanding with each other. And the best thing, as we're recording this now, we're ahead of Halloween, but also for people who are approaching the holidays, and you're going to see family members with whom you may disagree. Man, probably the single best thing you can do is to have a civil conversation with people in your family over politics and agree ahead of time. We're not going to let this get heated. I want to understand where you come from. Let's just sit down and let's have a piece of cake or whatever the hell we're going to do and just talk about it and come to some agreement and get to that point where, we can agree to disagree in terms of where our values are with certain issues, rather than just saying, no, my side is in charge now, so we're better than you, or your side is corrupt, or whatever the hell it's going to be that we see
Right.
so much now. And I know that's a very cliche thing to say, but we need to take it seriously because the history book is full of societies that have gone away and have seen real bloody civil wars. Our own country, the most bloody war we've ever had as Americans was against ourselves in the Civil War.
Yep.
The most brutal. I mean, just people just absolutely like the most brutal acts committed in war against our own neighbors, and it could happen again if we're not careful.
Yeah. Well, and just literal division amongst families too. You
Yeah,
had people fighting for the North and the South because whatever they saw each other's, or the sides as being virtuous, and one people wanted to align with the federal government, other people
yeah,
wanted to align with states' rights. Whatever your thoughts on those states' rights were, it just was a huge kind of it just tore families apart. And kind of like you said, I know people that have dismissed family members because of their political beliefs, and it's almost like, these are the people that raised you. These are the people that put food in your belly, that clothed you, sent you to school, let you live in their house, and things like that. And now you just don't want to have anything to do with them because of, it, like you said. I feel like you're right on that, and that there is more crisscross, like the lines of latitude thing. I think we generally feel like we agree more than we disagree, but it's just, as you had mentioned with the social media, like all the bot farming and things like that. I'll go on to these Facebook comments and I'm like, I don't even think half of these are real.
right,
I think
yeah,
these are just made up, and just to further engagement, and just to be able to, get people clicking on their stuff so that there's almost this illusion of turmoil, pun intended, the shirt. They're almost trying to drum shit up so that we do stay divided, and that we're never able to come to any consensus, because it's just like this side bad, like it never, it's almost never ending,
It is, and I hate to say it, but I do think it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Mm,
Um, at least in the macro sense. But again, the single bet, we can only control our own little worlds. How you go
yes.
out, how you carry yourself in the world, that you do have control over, and how you interact with your family. And I have it in my own family too. I have where it's better to just not talk about politics when we're together, and that's okay as like in terms of like avoiding fighting with people, but it has to be addressed. You can't live your life like that with people who are like, you're not going to talk about the big issues of the day because you run the risk of ruining your relationship. It's awful. It really is. And like you said, so much of it is artificial. And then artificial engagement with comments and things like that. And then also so much of the content itself is artificial and
Right.
misinformation or disinformation, intentionally created to sow discord between people. And that the only way to get around that is to have real human conversations with people. That's that's
Yeah.
that's just it, and to understand the value in it.
What's the most tactful way that you feel to approach somebody that you disagree with, to have a conversation with them?
That's a great question. um and I think part of the way to answer that is for me to share some of the things that I've learned in doing the work that I do over 25 plus years now. And a lot of this is really simple common sense stuff, but it's stuff that people have to keep in mind. um, People don't like being told that they're wrong. People really don't like being told that they're a bad person. um, and politics is mostly emotional. It's not intellectual. You can use intellect and facts and figures and history and all that to make your argument. But the truth of the matter is, it comes down to what's in your gut, what is important to you, your values, your emotional values. And all of that, everything is just like everything else in the universe, I think, whether it be an energy force, whether it be this bottle, whether it be the conversation that we're having, whether it be my opinion on something, whether it be the weather outside, everything that has ever existed, physical, metaphysical, what have you, ever existed and will exist, is the perfect, precise product of the system that created it. Everything. Even a machine that is banging out rivets, millions of them, every one of them is going to be a little bit different because of various factors so small we can't even measure them, but they are part of the system that created them. And the same thing is true with people and how we feel about things. And so somebody who's been working their whole life, being told that they're nothing, that they have to work hard, and they're out there working 80 hours a week, and they're not good at school, so they're not making a lot of money. They didn't get an advanced fancy degree or something. They don't have a good paying job. They're working really really hard, and they come home and they turn on the TV and or on their phone, and they see somebody telling them, "Hey, while you're working so hard, there are all these other people who don't deserve this, who are getting a better cut in our society, and they're getting a break. And you're wrong if you call that out." Right? Now these issues are all very, very complicated, right? But if you understand the person who is that hardworking guy or woman sitting there hearing that, there's a reason why they wind up getting the opinion that they have on things that are going on, right? It's all
Mhm.
part of that system that created it. And I think for me, one of the big pieces to getting through this challenge we have is to understand the person you are talking to. There are reasons. It doesn't mean that they're a hateful, mean person, um, um, a person, an apathetic person, or on the other side, somebody who's super empathetic to the point to where they put themselves last and everything else. They're reasons, they're real good reasons for why everybody is where they're at. Now, it doesn't excuse you from harming people. It doesn't, my right to believe and do what I want ends where your right to exist and your right to happiness and health starts, right? But we have that basic understanding that nothing, by that definition, nothing is illogical. Everything has a reason, and in that point, it's that split second where we all see each other as human, because we all have a story, and if we can have that in the back of our mind, it allows us to have a little less judgment and a little bit more clarity when we talk to people. And then you convey the same thing to them to help break down their wall. And then maybe they can see some things inside of you. And then before you know it, like you said, man, at the end of the day, we all want the same stuff. We want to be healthy. We want to be happy. We want the best for our family and the people we love. We want to feel satisfied in the work that we do. We want to feel that we're listened to, that our feelings are validated. We don't want to be told that we're wrong. We don't want to be told that we're a bad person because we believe what we believe, even if what they believe is flawed and needs some work and is potentially harmful. You need to approach it from that view. So for me, that's my take on it. That's my soapbox.
Beautifully said, man. Beautifully said. Back to Endeavor, and I was trying to order the shirt, but it didn't come in time, the constructive semantics shirt.
Oh,
You
nice.
had mentioned that on another podcast that you had commissioned some sort of progressive artist to be able to do the artwork. What's the significance of it? Because I really like it and I think it's unique, but I've always kind of been curious as to what the what it's about.
That's a great question. Yeah, it was David Scott Sinclair, and we commissioned him. I reached out to him because he used to do artwork for a lot of different organizations, and I used to see his. There was a magazine called The Progressive that he used to do artwork for pretty routinely, and I think that's where I saw got his information from. And I sent him a copy of the lyrics, and I said, we'd like to commission you to write a piece to make a piece for us, and that was his interpretation. And it was a take on the hearing, seeing, and speaking. um and it's weird for me, because for me it's about, I look at that and it's about society. That's my interpretation of it, but I don't know what his interpretation was, because again, I sent him the lyrics and that's what he came up with. So I don't have a correct answer in terms of what that artwork means, because like all art, it's all about the person who's looking
What
at it.
you think it means? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly.
So for me, it's about it's about our role in society. It's about how we use our senses to take in what's going on in the world, and to be the people who we are, and to take a stand with things that are important to us.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean that's I think that you're right on that. Like art is kind of what we make of it. I don't know if you remember the piece by the artist Andre Serrano. They called it Piss Christ.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah.
A lot of people interpreted that to mean that you're being a blasphemer, you're being sacrilegious towards Christ. But Andre Serrano's interpretation of it was like, no, that's what you're doing, and this is a mirror, and I'm showing that to you because you're hypocrites, or you're whatever you're utilizing religion to as a means to kind of uh you know mask the fact that you're like a terrible person or something, and that was his intent behind that. And I always found that to be interesting. I actually had a high school teacher tell me about that. And when when you think about it like that, also with David Lynch is kind of like, you know people are like, well, what does this mean? And he's like, what do you think it means?
Hmm.
It's kind of up to you.
That's right. Um, and it's interesting though how, and this is a sad thing, is that it's not even one of the things that troubles me about where we are as a society right now. It's just that facts are open to interpretation with the same type of creative, through the same type of creative lens that art is, in a way of, you can use facts and twist them in any way that you want to make the narrative that you want, right? You see that. It's the one thing you see constantly in social media, where you have their very creative interpretation of an event or of a phenomenon or of news or of a fact, statistics, whatever. And then what you don't have in front of you, what you can't prove, you just make up as a, as a, like a conspiracy theory. You just, it's very, very convenient. And it must
Yeah.
be life. It must be wonderful to have a life, to have to be such a person who's actually satisfied with that. But you're like, yeah, you know what? Where I don't have answers in life, I just make them up. It's whatever I want it to be, whatever makes me feel good. And I guess we all do that in our own way with some things. But when it's like, man, your interpretation of what's going on around you, that's that's not good. you
Yeah.
know. Um, but yeah, I hear you too with the point about the religious critiques, and that was something for me that was important, and I still do now. Like I have my own spiritual beliefs, um, that are very very strong reasons for that, but they are not rooted in organized religion. I have real problems with, in particularly with the Christian church, and in the way they've handled certain things, and the way they're handling things now, in the environment that we have now, where we really need people to truly stand up for principle, and we don't have that. We have them being subject to the whims of politics and social media, just like the rest of us, and it's very hard for me to hear or to accept a compelling argument for why I should accept the counsel and the leadership of a religious leader when they themselves are not a good example because of the compromises that they will very publicly make in the public sphere. And so all I say, man, is know what you believe, why you believe it. Try to find people who with whom you can build that off of, or develop that further, and people who maybe aren't on the same page with you, just help develop and enhance your own understanding. One of the
Perspective.
things
Sure.
one of the things I really like about your show, man, is how, learning a little bit about how your interest in how in depth you got with Krishna consciousness, hearing your conversations with some of your guests. For me, it's just, it's very stimulating, because even if I don't hold the same exact beliefs and I don't understand the references and things that you're making, there are ways that I can draw lines to, my own belief systems, and help me further develop it, and in my
Yep.
own way, and to
Appreciate that, by the way.
help me be a better person and be aware. And hey, the next time I have a, a conversation with somebody who's Krishna or Krishna conscious, I can have a more informed conversation, right? At the very least, that's something great to have in the world, is that better sense of understanding.
I appreciate you, man. That means a lot. And I'm kind of with you on the Christian church thing. And I know some wonderful Christians. I know some
Mhm.
people out there that are absolutely, they live what they believe, they walk the walk. But I had a problem with some of the churches in that they were kind of cheerleading for politics, and it's like, this is not why I go here. This is not what I am about. This is
Exactly.
not
Yeah.
what I want to hear. I want to hear about Jesus, or I want to hear about whomever, like whatever disciple in the Bible or whatever. I don't want somebody getting on a bullhorn being like, we need to vote for this candidate, we need to vote for this candidate. That just wasn't me. And so one of the things I was attracted to with Krishna consciousness was the fact that it was pretty apolitical. I mean, I have a subset of political beliefs, but when I go to a temple, I'm not going to, exposit those or anything like that. And the founder of Krishna consciousness, Srila Prabhupada, he's like, this really isn't that important, like in the grand scheme of things. And back to what we were saying about the whole like humanization of people, like when you're trying to see people as being human, he's like, we're all spirit souls, we're all atma, like we're all the same. Like this body is just flesh. And he says, he always uses the reference blood, stool, pus, and urine. He's like, that's all the body is. He's like, but the soul is eternal.
Mhm.
It's he said, he uses the term satchit ananda, eternal and full of bliss. And when we can come to see each other as being just souls, not some sort of skin color, gender, sexual orientation, when we can see people as just being the soul, that's really where we really start to advance as a society. In that, like, let's just, we're all humans, we're all on this journey together. Like, let's, all these little small things, all the minutia of what we're focusing on is really not that important. And having a spiritual center is really what's important. So, and
Yeah.
what we were saying about Endeavor, like being so politically charged, did you guys ever have any pushback within the hardcore scene as a result of that, like
Not
either with
really.
individuals or bands? No.
A little bit, not really. Um, I think it had more to do with the time period because we were, we were out starting to play shows in 1993, and then we played our last show, uh, in our last official show, like as a regular band in 1998. And then we did do that reunion at Nate Fest in 15. Um, but during that period, the 90s, I mean, those were the Clinton years. And our critique, we were much like I am now. I am not in either camp. I am an independent. And I
Mm-hmm.
have criticisms of both sides, both parties and philosophies and
Sure.
worldviews. And that was true too with Endeavor. What changed, I found, was after 9/11, once the war on terror started, um, was, I'd say, during Burnt by the Sun era. Even when I was in NORA, like there would be, I remember I had a something, I forget, I had some sticker on my guitar case or something, um, about the war, and I remember like occasionally having people like calling me out on it, and want to talking with people and getting in arguments and stuff. And then with Burnt by the Sun, we had many times where, after the show, we'd be outside, in the parking lot, having hour-long debate with somebody about something who really disagreed. And I love your band, but I hate what you have to say about this. It's like, okay, well, let's talk about it. Let's have a conversation.
Yeah.
You know, and that was one of the great things I love about hardcore is that opportunity, and in some ways makes it just a very, very real community with real values. I didn't mention this yet on the names of list of names I've been in, but I'm playing with Disembodied now.
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
and
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
we, we played a couple of shows. We did a show in Minneapolis, and then we played Hellfest in Jersey this past summer. And at one point, I was losing track of the point that I was trying to make. Um,
The
was
political
Oh,
pushback.
about hardcore. Oh, I made a point. I said, in my life now, a 50-year-old, person looking back on my life when I first got into hardcore, I can tell you in this world that we're in now, where there's so much artificial, hardcore is about as real as it gets, because it is a microcosm. You do have cliques, and you do have shortcomings and hypocrisies and paradoxes, and that's what makes it real. But you do have this community that still exists regardless of who's in charge, what the politics are, what style of hardcore is playing. Is it beat down, or is it more emo stuff, whatever. There's this culture that we have, and it essentially is still the same. It is, and it's very, in that sense, it makes it very, very real. um, and so I'm still proud, even at 50 years old. Didn't think I'd be back singing again, and here I am. And it's been a reminder as to why the scene was so important to me as a young adult, and why it's still important in society now.
Absolutely. And Disembodied's a fucking great band, man. Like, and Joel and Tara are some
Great people,
wonderful
man.
human beings. Yeah,
Great
absolutely.
people.
I,
And
I
and
actually,
the thing, I'm glad you mentioned them too, real quick. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I
no.
wanted to mention this before, because we were talking about spirituality and religion, and as far as I know, they're pretty hardcore atheists. Um, they are some of the nicest, most kind people I've ever met in my life. And
Absolutely.
for me, that's what it's all about, is about treating people right. You know, the platinum rule: treat people how they want to be treated. That's it.
Sure.
If you follow that rule, man, you are set.
Yeah.
And you don't, and I think at the end of the day, at the root of most faiths, there is that simple tenet. It's just be
Yep.
good to people. Be good to people. Treat them how they want to be treated.
Yeah.
That's it. If you
Yeah.
do that, you will have very few enemies in this life.
Yeah.
Very few
Yeah. I
reasons for
agree.
people that, and very satisfied in your own life, and plenty of opportunities to put other people before yourself, and with a spirit of sacrifice, and even just complimenting people, making people
Sure.
feel good about what they're doing, and trying to show a genuine interest in what people are doing, and encouraging them. Um, you stick by that. It doesn't matter what badge you wear on your sleeve.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry.
The
Back
gold.
to Joel and Tara. I didn't mean to cut you
Oh,
off.
no, no, you're good. The golden rule too. I think that that's really. I think that that's really important.
Platinum rule.
The platinum rule. Yes. Yes.
Treat others how
Exactly.
they want to be treated. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. The yeah, I auditioned for Martyr AD back in the day, and I actually stayed
Oh,
with Joel and Tara. Yeah,
really?
they were. Oh yeah, they they opened up their place to me and were just really cool. And Joel's actually a really funny guy.
Oh, yeah.
He was he was. I mean, this was God, what 2003, 2004. He was showing me all this crazy like stuff on the internet. Like there was this band Dokaka, which was this Japanese guy. It was kind of like Judd, if you ever heard Judd. The guy that did okay. It was a guy they did like hardcore songs, but just with like a cappella with their voices, and they did like
Oh, okay,
y-
okay, all right.
yeah,
Oh, yeah,
Earth
yeah. I know what
Crisis
you're talking about. Yeah,
Firestorm. They're
yeah,
like
yeah.
Judd.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
They did he showed me this guy Dokaka who was from Japan, and he was doing like Slayer covers like Angel of Death and like Iron Maiden the Trooper, and he would do all the instruments with his voice and stuff. I remember thinking that was the funniest shit. And I knew them. I guess they moved down to Long Beach, and it was funny because I saw them at a 108 show, and I was like, "Holy shit, what's up?" And I understand Tara had some health problems a while ago. I hope she's doing better.
I can't speak of that specifically.
Okay.
Probably wouldn't be right for me if I did, anyhow. Even
Gotcha.
if I
Yeah,
did
yeah,
know.
yeah.
But they're both doing well. I mean, they got a beautiful kid. And for me, part of being able to play with them um, has been reconnecting with them, because on Endeavor's first, I guess technically our second U.S. tour, our tours happened to crisscross with Disembodied. This was going back 29 years, and we played a bunch of dates together, and we just like fell in love with them, just as a band and as people. And we, since then, like we were, our friends, Carl and Josh Truskill, like they put out their records, and they come through town, they'd stay with us, and then of course with Martyr, Burnt by the Sun did a tour with Martyr. There was just it's great to have that connection with them, almost 30 years later, and to be getting to sing songs that I love. It's great doing it as a fan of the band.
Well, hopefully, you guys can come down to the southeast because I did see Disembodied. It was supposedly their last show. It was up in Minneapolis at I guess it was a club that the guy from Dillinger Four used to book shows at. But it was Disembodied's last show, and then it was Harvest's return show because I guess they did that Years of Defiance, Years of Disgust.
Mhm.
That was a really cool EP. But hopefully, hopefully you guys southeastern tour maybe.
Oh, who knows? Who knows? We are confirmed. We are playing Hellfest West. In was it Santa Ana? Is it? I think
Think so. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
in February. So really, really looking forward to that. Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
next thing.
that's a hell of a lineup. I'd love to be able to see that. Who knows? Maybe I will if I can arrange some time off or something. But let's talk a little bit about Burnt by the Sun. That was a really cool project for me to see that you were doing. I absolutely love the band. I think you guys were so brutal and crushing, and I was always curious about the name. When I would look up the name, there was this film from 1994 that would turn up
Right.
called "Burnt by the Sun." Is that where the name comes from?
No, no, it's way less cerebral than that. It was literally John and Dave used to play in a band called Black Army Jacket,
Okay.
and they were on tour, and they had like a day off, and they went to the beach, and one of them got really sunburned, and somebody said, just kind of described it and said, "Oh, look at you, you got burnt by the sun." And somebody said that would be a cool band name. And literally, that's years later that came up when we were deciding
Wow.
what names to pick. And yeah, I liked it just because of how you could interpret it.
Yeah.
It really is open to interpretation, and so that was the first name that we were like, yeah, okay, that works. That could we can kind of make that work in our heads.
Sure.
And that was it. Yeah, but
I remember the first thing I heard you do was the split with another great New Jersey band, which God, I wish they'd done more material, was Luddite Clone.
yeah,
Like, holy shit, what an amazing band. Like I think whatever happened to those guys? And did they ever go on to do any more projects?
they changed their name to Kiss the. I think it was Kiss the Cynic. They changed their name to.
Okay.
I don't
I
know
do
why they.
remember that band.
I don't know why they changed it, but no, we I don't. They were not very long lived. I know that the comparisons that were made to Dillinger were definitely a factor because people were. I remember there was a period of time when they would start their set out by going by the singer saying, "We are not Dillinger," and then they would start their song. And I think it just became a controversy, and that probably didn't help them out. I don't know ultimately why they wound up not sticking around, but yeah, I love those songs. I love those songs that they did, and those "Burnt by the Sun" songs. Those were of the first. So Dave and John had been writing material together, and they say that they'd been hearing, me kind of in their minds vocals like over the music. And so I was playing in NORA at the time. They came up to a NORA show and said, "Hey, we're doing a project. We'd really love for you to check it out and sing for it." And I knew John. I knew John because he was in an amazing band called Time's Up, and Endeavor had done a short tour with them. They were from our same area, and everybody knew Whitty and worshipped Whitty. And I'd actually tried Chris from that band Try Fail Try, um, Ben Wyman from Dillinger, and Whitty got together to see if we could start a project together. And we had one practice, and it just didn't go anywhere. I think we all just kind of got together to be like, "Hey, wonder what this would be like. Let's have fun for a couple of hours." But about a year after that was when John and Dave came up and said, "Hey, we want to do something. We'd like you to sing for it." And I was like, "I don't even need to hear it. Of course, I'm in."
Based on the personnel.
Just like I knew it was going to be awesome, and
Yeah.
Whitty, especially at the time, Whitty's reputation was just amazing. I mean, there would be every show there'd just be a crowd of people around him watching him play drums,
Oh, he's
and
incredible.
super, just an amazing person, and again, one of those people, man, platinum rule, the most humble, even back then, man, the most humble player. Loved watching all the opening bands, would go up, talk to the, compliment them on just a warm, wonderful person. Whitty is one of my favorite people in the world, and the world is better with him in it, just his personality. So it was an honor to get to play with them, and I felt like I had to really get better at what I did in order to justify being in that band, because they were playing this, very, you know, um, innovative music, heavy, but it wasn't straightforward. It was different, and
Right.
even parts that were 4/4 beat wise, John's riffs were really weird and, doing lots of interesting stuff. And so that first batch of material that was on that split EP were some of the first. Those were like the very rough cuts of the songs, or the first songs that I heard from them. So I was like, hell yeah, man.
Yeah. Yeah. That I I think I bought that when it was like brand new, and I think I bought it on vinyl, and I was just like, fucking A, like this is awesome. This is so good. And I wanted to make mention too that I don't know if you were in the band at this time. It would have been around like 99, but Nora was the first hardcore show I ever saw. Nora and Stretch Armstrong and
Oh,
Sky Came Falling. Were
oh
you
really?
playing with them at that
Oh,
time?
that down south.
Yes.
Yes, that dude. We have video footage from that weekend. That was like a
Oh,
short weekend
I
tour.
have to see this.
Yes, yeah, we
Okay.
have. That was a great. That was 99, man. That was a
Yeah.
great year for me. I had finished college the winter of '98, and life was just good at that point, man. I was just had a lot of confidence from school. I was in great shape. Like I was just on a high. I felt like I could accomplish anything. I just felt like just rolling. And I loved NORA, that era of NORA stuff. I just loved playing those, writing those songs and playing them live. And that
Yeah.
weekend in particular was an infamous one because I was on a very high protein liquid diet at the time. And man, just as 200 grams of protein a day, man, you just
Oh
could just like
God.
clear out a van with those farts. And so it was very, yeah, to this day, man. I mean, literally, where it's like 25 years later, and like they will still bring it up, being
Oh
like,
wow.
"Dude, remember that?
Yeah.
Remember that?"
I'm sure the shits weren't fun either.
No, it was it did the trick. I got my body fat where I wanted it to be, but everybody paid the
tortured
price.
tortured everybody else. Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to see this footage because yeah, that was a life-changing event for me, like that was when I really first to got able to that's when I was first able to really experience hardcore like in the flesh, like I'd been to some minor like punk rock shows like here and there, but like to not really know anything about the environment that I was going into. Sorry, dude. He fell down. Jason fell. To not really know anything about the environment that I was going into, and I didn't know anything about Nora or Sky Came Falling, but like Stretch Armstrong was huge for me. And so to get to experience these other bands, Carl actually, I talked to Carl and I brought that show up, and he was like, "Oh, yeah, a bunch of people walked out on that show because we weren't like a Christian band or
That's
whatever."
right. I
And I was
remember
like,
that. Yes,
"Yeah."
yes.
He's seemed pretty salty about
I
that.
remember that particular show that weekend. Yeah, I remember that. That was a
Yeah.
big deal.
I think I was a Christian at the time, but I stayed and watched. I was like, "This band's fucking
Yeah, it
great,"
was interesting that time and with Stretch because I mean, obviously we weren't a like anti-Christian or anything. We weren't religious, like nothing. We just weren't. The fact that we were not a self-proclaimed Christian band, that there were people who were not going to watch us. And I remember we thought that was like
Right.
judgmental and pretty shitty and
Kind of.
and whatever. It was like, okay, I mean, we're not. We're pretty nice guys.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Yeah.
That's kind of why I stuck around and watched, because a lot of my exposure was through the Tooth and Nail, Solid State, like
Yep.
hearing a
Yep.
lot of those bands through church and stuff like that. So being able to go and hear bands that weren't affiliated with that, I was like, I'll just give them a chance. Like I might like this, and I did. It was
Mm.
great. I was listening to the whole discography the other night. With back to Burnt by the Sun though. Um, I noticed this recurring theme of, you have a song Famke, you have a song Forlani, like 90s movies babes. Was that, where was that connection from? Was that, was somebody was in the band that, I mean, I guess, did you title the songs?
Oh
Like,
yes,
what?
yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
there's
What?
there are three actually in that row. There's a trilogy of songs named after notable women. There's Buffy
What I
on
miss?
there's
Oh,
Buffy on the
Buffy.
EP.
Okay. Okay.
Um, and there's Famke, and which is after Famke Janssen, the
Right.
actress, and then Furlani after Claire Furlani. And
Ah,
each, if you look at the
so
lyrics of
beautiful.
all their songs, they're essentially about the same thing. They are about um, obsessions with beauty and bodies and in
Oh,
society.
whoops.
Yes.
I missed the point.
Yes. Yeah, if you look through, I mean, look at it with that lens, and hopefully it stands out. If not, I didn't write the lyrics so well. But from
Okay.
my mind, that's what it was, and those were just sort of examples. And each one of them is a little different. You know,
Mhm.
at the time, I had written some of them, as I mentioned before, on the NORA trip. I had a period of time where I definitely had an issue with my own body image. I was
Mhm.
very conscious, like I had become very, very obsessed with like how muscular and ripped can I get, and it was this, it's like I knew it was false, right? I knew it was Maya, but I still pursued it because I was imperfect and I had an obsession. I do have a semi obsessive personality, and
Mhm.
so my way of kind of clawing at that and dealing with that was to write those three songs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'll be totally honest with you. Sometimes I don't read the lyrics. I just really kind of get into the groove of the music, and I definitely love your vocal delivery. But the reason I asked the question was because I had an absolute crush on Claire Forlani back in the day, from like Mallrats and The
Oh, yeah.
Rock and Meet Joe Black. So I guess it went right over my head. Like I loved her. I guess she still acts, but I don't
Yeah.
like she was like an it girl back in the day, and like
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I don't really see her in much anymore. But
We we had and for two of those shirts, we had a special series of Burnt by the Sun T-shirts we used to make, um, where they were focused on song titles, and I'll have to send you the artwork so you can see them. We don't have, unfortunately, have the shirts anywhere else. So I would send you some,
okay,
but they were basically just like a square on the shirt with a face print of, like, we had the Famke one, and it was this great side profile shot of Famke. It was like a two-color piece with the
okay,
name, and then we had one with Forlani too, which was really cool. So I'll definitely send you the Forlani one so you
yeah,
can see.
I'd
But
love
we
to
had
see
a whole
that.
series. The Famke ones were probably our biggest selling shirt we ever had. We would, oh my God, man, we would, I don't know how many dozens and dozens of those things we would sell. I mean, we would sell out of them so quickly. They were such a popular item.
Right? Yeah. I mean, I Goldeneye is my favorite James Bond movie. I think she's one of the best Bond villainesses. And okay, on that
Mhm.
topic, do you feel like our society places too much of an emphasis on physical beauty? Because you know our I mean, we as men, I think that's, the first thing we notice, and like if we like, somebody that's like aesthetically pleasing to us, that's kind of the initial spark. That's kind of the initial attraction. So, but ultimately, I do feel like it is superficial. A big one for me was Rose McGowan. I thought she was absolutely beautiful. I still think she's beautiful. But it was really her intelligence and her wit and just, everything that she experienced in Hollywood. I'm just like, man, what a strong woman, like she had to go through so much. But do you feel like our society kind of loses the plot when we do kind of place that emphasis on physical beauty?
Yeah, for sure. I think there are exceptions to it. I think there are some moments where it is actually helpful for society, and that is has to do, I think, with aging. If you see people who are, as they say, aging gracefully, which basically means you didn't get any work done, right? And
Yeah.
you are taking care of yourself, not obsessively, but just, you look healthy and you're aging and you look the way you should look. You look your most beautiful at whatever age you are, and you're most healthy. And that's a
Hmm.
really positive role model, I think, as opposed to the, hey, I'm in my 50s and I want to look like I'm 20 again, because then you just look weird. And that's what you see a lot of. I think there are, unfortunately, a lot of younger people who are growing up on Instagram, who are seeing these standards of beauty, um, and they think that's the way you have to look, or
Right.
you think the other thing too is, like, even with access that kids have to, like porn, where they think that this is, when you go on a date, this
Real.
is how you're supposed to treat
Right.
a girl, or a girl, or the or somebody thinks, um in terms of your body, your anatomy, like, this is the norm, because this is, you're with a guy for the first time, and this is what you are expecting to see, because that's what you see in pornography, when
Right.
not everyone's John Holmes, right? Right, I mean,
Yeah.
to be blunt,
Right.
right? So
Well,
you have
exactly.
that sort of stuff. So I think it cuts both ways. For sure, women have the much shorter end of the stick, because men are, like you said, men, are first attracted more by what they see, generally speaking, than women are. So there are standards in terms of how they value people. Unfortunately, I think for a lot of people, kind of get stuck in that filter, that first filter, and that's how they view things. And
Sure.
but as you get older, you look past that. And again,
Yeah.
for me, I think like things that are positive, like aging gracefully, are really, really helpful. Um, Not just to people who are those of us who are 50 and older now, but for even people like, my daughter and my son who are teenagers, knowing that, it's okay to look the way you're born to look, the way you look, and you don't need
Right.
to adopt these standards or try to achieve a certain standard. And honestly, too, a lot of these Instagram people just look ridiculous, man.
Oh yeah.
Like I go to the gym and I see, you'll see someone who's like, a beautiful woman, a 20-year-old working at, doing her thing. And it wouldn't honestly really have paid much mind, except she's doing selfies and doing these pouty
Right.
faces and poses, and like, you look ridiculous, man.
Yeah.
And when did that, like, I could see doing that at home when no one can see you and you're like goofing off, but like in public, like,
Yeah.
it's, and on one hand I'm like, okay, she doesn't care, great, good for her. On the other hand, it's like, why are you doing it? You're doing it to
Right.
contribute to setting this sort of standard as here's me at my best, when you really want people to think this is what you look like all the time when you don't.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And with that, when they do the whole like setting up the camera and then a guy glances over and it's like he's probably trying to figure out what she's doing. And then she's like, "Why are you looking at me? Why are you looking at me?" And I'm like, this guy probably didn't have want to have anything to do with this. Now he's like a viral TikTok creep because he was glancing over to be like, "Is this girl really setting up a camera? Like, what's going on here?" I'm sure
Yeah.
there are guys that are legitimately like, creeps and stuff, but I don't know. Like it to me, it just seems like again back to what we were talking about with the political stuff for engagement, to get their name out there, do stuff like that. I don't know, but yeah, I'm with you. I think that I'm glad that they're starting to do these like camera free gyms, or camera free zones to where they can't set it up, like so.
I am really looking forward to seeing that in my gym, because I go to I don't go to like a big mainstream, like, what do you
Planet
call it?
Fitness or
Yeah,
yeah.
the $5 a month type of thing. I go to a real gym where there are people who like really train,
Hmm.
with chalk and everything, and are like genuine bodybuilders, like dudes who you're like, wow, like I'm gonna look at that dude just because he's a freak of nature, like the
Right.
development and stuff. You're like, that dude is legit. That dude is getting ready for a show, and he looks
Yeah.
amazing. Um, but yeah, we can do without the camera stuff. It's just it's not helping us.
Yeah. It's kind of superficial, but uh back to Burnt by the Sun. What were you guys kind of channeling as far as stylistically, because that's quite a pivot from Endeavor. Endeavor seemed to be more rooted in punk, and Burnt by the Sun definitely had people always compared you to grindcore, and I guess I could see that like with certain aspects of the music, but like metalcore, like what what was kind of the focus like as far as stylistically with that band?
There wasn't really, like, I definitely had my own vocal influences, but with the music, you know, it's strange because I don't know anybody who wrote riffs like John. I mean, some of them, there's like some stuff you can hear, like influences, like some songs you're like, oh, that part kind of reminds me of this or something. But generally speaking, like when like looking at a lot of his riffs, and he didn't really like would share, like there was never anything where he'd be listening to a lot of something and then we're at practice and he's saying, hey, here's a new song and it sounds like that. It was always just like very organic for him and very natural for him. So I don't really know. Like we never really, um, in terms of those influences, they weren't really clearly known. Like certainly not known to me, as far as like the actual music goes. For me, vocally, I definitely had my own influences. I mean, before we started the show, we were talking about Earth Crisis. Carl Buechner, definitely one of my big influences. Gomorrah Seasons Ends, that first opening track, Broken Foundation, when I heard that, not just his tone, but the percussive nature of his vocal placements, they were like an instrument, and that really inspired me. Like that was and him, um, um, Candiria was another one, like with the off timing type of stuff, like in songs like Famke, where you hear this really weird riff, and the time signature of the drums going underneath it, and then my phrasings and how they're placed. That was definitely for me inspired very much by Carly from Candiria. I just like that sort of feel to it. And then there are other things. Scott Angelicos from Bloodlet, like the long
Oh,
screams and stuff.
amazing.
I
Yeah.
got that from him. Like that was something when I first heard him do that on those early EPs. It was like, that is what I want to learn how to do.
Oh, yeah.
And so that for me is the root of it. Like anytime I did a long scream, it was me channeling Scott. Just a really great vocalist. So for me, like once I learned how to do that, and it was like, okay, here are kind of the tools that I have. It was like, let's see how this makes sense over what these guys are writing.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, Bloodlet. Oh, fucking amazing band. That's a good one to be influenced by for sure. Um, with The Perfect is the Enemy of the Good, I noticed that there was the all-seeing Illuminati eye or whatever. And, for me personally, I am one of those people that is kind of like goes down the conspiracy theory rabbit hole. Was that kind of what the idea behind the artwork was? Is that something that you kind of get into?
Well, lyrically, the record touches on, both issues and conspiracy theories. And then things, including in some cases like the opening track, Washington Tube Steak, has to do with the Iraq War and how it could very much be, a vehicle to redefining the Pax Americana, right? The America's influence and control in the world through foreign policy. The title of the record, though, what it ultimately gets at, though, is, the perfect is the enemy of the good, really is a reference to how in our effort attempt to try and develop a perfect understanding of the world in which we live, we are cutting ourselves short, because you're never going to have a perfect understanding. And so you fill it in with conspiracy theories and assumptions and other types of things. And so that's really what how the title of the song connects to the record and to the content of the record. But it wasn't really like, and there was like references to like the Trilateral Commission and things like that. 2012, the song deals with the Mayan calendar predicting the end of the world. It was these things, and it was about, here are intriguing things that people use to try to make sense of the world. It's not saying that we believe them. It's just simply saying, here are things that are out there that people use to try to make sense of the world, and their attempt to try to develop a more perfect understanding of the world.
That's really eloquent and well said. And yeah, I noticed the little Alex Jones like
Oh yeah.
snippets at the end of the song there. I
Oh,
think
and
he was
he's
talking about the Iraq War.
Yep. There are clips of samples of him and other people who are in that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I I love that stuff. Like I said, I'll spend hours on YouTube just, whether or not it has any merit, it makes you think, like you said, it's just kind of like,
Yep.
maybe I'm wrong about something, or maybe they're wrong about something, or maybe I'm on to something, like I think that's what I really favorite conspiracy theory.
Oh, for me, probably favorite meaning. Well,
One that you look into a lot, or one that you kind of find yourself
oh,
fascinated by.
oh. Right now, I have to say probably, and I don't want to go too deep in this because I know we're going a long time, but
Sure.
definitely, I think there are a lot of unanswered questions around the Charlie Kirk killing.
Oh, yeah, that's a new one.
A lot of stuff,
Yeah.
with the video and there not being a gun, and all this stuff in the background, and there's just a lot. And then the way the government communicated, um, about what the investigation was, and when they did it, and all sorts of stuff that doesn't seem to make sense. It's very, and there could be very good explanations for everything. It could really be just
Sure.
all that simple, but there's a lot that's unanswered for, and a lot of people like podcasters and stuff who are talking about it, who are talking about getting lots of mysterious threats and things like that. So I try not to dig too deep into that stuff because it can drive you crazy.
Oh
You
yeah.
really can begin to think that the world is not what you are seeing around you, and that you have no control, and life is hopeless. Um, but there are some definitely a lot of intriguing questions around that particular situation. Yeah,
For sure. And it's still unraveling. It's
that's right.
crazy to me.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, that's like our my favorite is the Kennedy assassination. Favorite. I mean, like my one that I
Right.
look into extensively is the Kennedy assassination, and that was something that, people experienced in real time. It was so like shocking and just yeah, I somebody sent me the actual video and I was like I did not want to see it, but at the same time I was just like, maybe like it's like kind of like a fuse in my brain broke. I was like, holy shit, like we haven't seen anything like this since then, you know?
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Two more questions for you.
Mhm.
What is one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self?
Uh, it would be to go for it. I found in my life, and this was especially true right after I finished college, but even during college, I was risk averse in certain ways with certain things, and there are reasons for that, like everything else in the universe, right?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I would say there were definitely things that I should have just gone for more for, and not maybe half-assed, but gone full on in. One of them certainly would have been back in right. Let's see, the early 2000s. I started. It wasn't podcasts weren't even called podcasts then. It was internet radio. I used to do an internet
O
radio show
report.
called the O
Yeah.
Report,
Yep.
and I really enjoyed that. It started out as like a goof, as like a parody thing, a way of like making fun of stuff that was going on as a website.
Hmm.
And then I started doing some audio things with it, and then I started getting much more. The war on terror started, things really started picking up, and then literally, man, I mean, Burt by the Sun went to tour in Japan. And dude, after the show, like the dudes would all be out having drinks. I would go to the internet cafe with my laptop and would be updating the website. Like I was really, and then I would do these weekly web radio shows, and
Yeah.
I was getting really good guests on, and starting to get a good following. And I just I had reasons. I had like work was shifting. I was doing community organizing work, and things were getting really, really busy. But I wish I stuck with it. You know,
I
I could have
liked it,
been
man.
one of the biggest podcasters in the world right now. Who
Could
knows?
be.
Because
You could have
again,
been the next Alex Jones.
it was podcasting before that. It was called a podcast. But
Yeah.
it was essentially is what it was. So yeah, my younger self, and even before that, I'd say just go for it, man. Like don't be so careful. Just go for it.
I think that's, a piece of advice a lot of us could benefit from. I feel you on that. There's Vic Dakara actually kind of said something the opposite, in that he was like, sometimes I wish I hadn't stepped into things, or if I had, that I wish I hadn't done them like in a brazen fashion. I think that would probably be a piece of advice for myself. Like
Hmm.
I had no problem going for it. I would always, launch into something, but then it would be, you know, well, I don't have any money now, or now I'm stuck in this scenario or whatever. But yeah, I think that a lot of people can remain sedentary sometimes, and don't make any real advancement in life because they do have this feeling of trepidation, like what if I fail, like what if I, embarrass myself or whatever. Like I think that that's good. I think that's great.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, man. um all right, so with media, we talked about it pretty extensively at the beginning, but at present, what are you watching, what are you reading, and what are you listening to?
Uh, let's see here. Reading, I'll admit I don't read very much outside of what I need to do for work. Um,
Mhm.
because I'm constantly reading and writing reports and things like that. And keeping track of what's going on in our state legislature and what's going on in Congress. And so most of what I actually sit down and actually read, spending time doing it is work related. Um, for enjoyment, even like books and stuff, I tend to prefer to listen to them. Even I mentioned before, Heat 2, that book, I have the book because I wanted the book, but like truth is like I'm was really listening to it while reading along in the book,
Right.
For me, it's got more to do more of an attention thing and my mind wandering off of the pages of long books. I really just can't really do it anymore. Um, listening, I listen to a lot of podcasts, um, and they typically tend to be stuff that is either, political related, what's going on in the world, um, music related. And so, honestly, like, I genuinely am a fan of your show. So you, this is hardcore. There are a few other podcasts that I generally don't miss. The one that what is it? The Revelation Records one, where they go through all
Oh,
the records.
the one that oh yeah, I know
The
it.
one Javier and the other guy do. I'm trying to
Javier.
remember.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh, bring bringing it back. Is that what it is? No. What is it? I can't remember. You know what I'm
What
talking about, though.
yeah, but yeah, are they still doing that?
I always like re-listen to them, so
Okay.
it may not even
I
be there. I'm looking it up here now as I'm thinking of others.
I know I know they were doing it pretty heavily during COVID, but I hadn't
Where it
seen
went,
any
where it went.
where it went. That's what it
Yeah,
is. Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a
And
good
then,
one.
yeah, and then other like health related ones, so like Renaissance periodization, like weight training, stuff like that. Like I just in my even though I'm not like obsessive like I used to be about it, and kind of get to the gym when I can now, like I that field has evolved tremendously in the last 25 years, and so I like to learn about that type of stuff. So also helps me pick what to eat and what not to eat too. And then watching, man, like I said before, like a lot of times I just kind of go to the default stuff that I'm familiar with, and that feels good. There are some exceptions to it. I really did like the first two seasons of The Bear. I thought
Oh
that was
yeah.
like incredibly intense and stressful,
Yeah.
but like pretty awesome. For laughs, there's nothing beats Schitt's Creek. Like I can rewatch any of those episodes anytime. I think they're hysterical. And then crime documentaries, stuff like that. That's probably one of the favorite things that my lady and I like to do when we want to relax, is just like put something on Hulu and find out some interesting stuff about some really terrible people. Even though I know it's not the healthiest thing to do, especially at night before you go to bed. But yeah, that's kind of it. But I a lot of for me, a lot of what I like to watch, like the feel good stuff, I watch in seasons. So there's stuff I like to watch when it's cold out. I love to watch. We were talking about French Connection before. That's a winter movie
Yeah.
for me because it's so
Yeah.
cold, and like they were literally stomping their feet outside in some of those scenes because they were so cold in New York filming that stuff. Like I love watching that. Um, um, Dr. Shivago is another one I like watching in the
That's a
winter.
cold movie.
Cold movie, man, right? And
Yeah.
then in the summer, it's some Bond. You mentioned Bond before, Casino Royale, probably my
Mm,
favorite Bond movie.
okay.
Um, Great summer movie. A lot of the Heat again, Michael Mann, a lot of Michael Mann stuff I'll watch in the summer. I feel Apocalypse Now for sure.
Oh, that's a
The
summer movie.
Apocalypse Now, though, man, it's got to be hot and the air conditioning has got to be off, and I got to watch it at night. That's sort of the rules to watch that.
That's
I
so
haven't done that.
interesting.
Haven't done that in a while though. It's been some
I
years. So
I've never heard anybody coordinating their film watching based on what season it was. Obviously, if there's a holiday like a Christmas movie, but based on like the climate and the temperature, that's so crazy.
like I said, man, a semi obsessive personality I have. So
Well, you'll appreciate this then. The first time that I ever saw The Exorcist, I was laying in my bed, and I like it kind of like cold in my room while I'm like either sleeping or just hanging out or whatever. And you mentioned your brother was in the Marines. I was actually in the Marines at the time, and one of my buddies knocks on my door, and he comes in, and I'm watching The Exorcist, and I was like, "Oh yeah, come on in, man." And I just go back down and I lay on my bed, arms splayed like that, and you could see my breath. And he was like, "Are you watching The Exorcist, man?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he just kind of looks over at me and like, I guess he was kind of spooked out because I was mimicking the exact same position as Reagan. He goes, "Have you
Wow.
ever seen this?" And I said, "No." He was just like,
Wow.
"Okay, I'm gonna go now." Yeah,
A wise call. Wow, that's
yeah,
funny. Amazing.
fucked up. But
Amazing.
Mike, we uh, River Black. Real quick, let's talk about River Black. Like,
Yep.
are you doing anything with that? Are you still playing with that project? Are
No, that
you
that's done. That was pretty short lived. That was a post Burnt by the Sun band, um, and they with it was Dave and John and Brett Bamberger, who used to be in Revocation, and a Publicist UK. I think he still plays with them, which is another band that him and Whitty do together, which is great. Very different stuff though. Yeah, they were doing, they had Dimitri from Dillinger singing. That was like the first singer. They had a couple of other guys who honestly were like great. They had three different singers. Um, and the band was going under different names, and it just wasn't they were all great, but they just weren't, for whatever reasons, weren't really working out. And each time one would fall through, they'd reach out and say, "Hey man, how's your timing? How's the timing now? Would you be up for doing this?" And I had two small kids at the time. I just wasn't really interested in pursuing anything. And then finally they were like, "Look, we got these songs. We've just kind of, we really want you to do this. We've signed with Season of Mist Records. We've got, we want to go in the studio. And so they sent me. Actually, I'd heard some of the material before, and I really liked it. And then I said, okay, let's do it, but I can't tour and this and that. And then so that was it. We finished up, wrote the record, recorded it pretty quickly. We did not play many shows. I definitely less than 10 shows, I'd say we played total. Yeah, not many. Um, but it was great. I liked how, it was more rhythm focused. It wasn't as the drums were much more straightforward. It was super heavy.
Yeah.
And lyrically, I kind of followed the trajectory from the last Burnt by the Sun record, which was this, going, Apocalypse Now, Heart of Darkness theme from the Burnt record, going into the whole River Black. And each song has to, well, not every song, but a lot of the songs make references to this sort of trip of the mind going down river, deeper into understanding. So it was fun to do it. And I'm glad we were able to do it. Wish we could have done a bit more with it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was a project that I was unfamiliar with, and then I started doing some more research, and
Mhm.
that was one that had come up, and I love the artwork. The artwork is incredible. Like,
I,
was
I was
that? Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. I was going to say that a second ago. Actually, I really love the artwork in it. I love that type of artwork. You don't see it much, especially in records.
Oh,
And I thought every bit of it, I just loved. In fact, some of it I scanned and did a little photoshopping and made little prints of some of them, just isolated because I really
nice.
like them that much. Yeah, very
Who
cool
who
vibe.
did that artwork?
I don't remember. I don't know, should I say. I think it was somebody Dave knows.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
And then
Yeah.
the violinist too was somebody who Brett knows, who
Okay.
we sent her the song and she wrote a piece that complemented the notes of the music and the beginning and the end of that song. South by South? Um, so on that record, yeah.
Beautiful. That's yeah. I really enjoyed it. It was almost like a continuation of Burnt by the Sun, but it almost had like this, like rock rhythm, like you had said, almost like a Southern Fried NOLA influence, a la like
Mm-hmm.
Down or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
like Crowbar. Yeah.
Yeah, it was John. Yeah, John was going through a more simple phase. He just wanted to strip parts down and use things like octave pedals and single note playing in some parts, but he do 4 bars just straight and then just hit an octave pedal, and it sounds like he's doing a chord and he's not, and just doing his weird bends and things like that. And bass, Brett's bass playing was very different than Ted's. Equally good, like both of them. I mean, always love watching Ted play. And then Brett came in. I'm like, dude, yeah, like he really filled in the space quite a bit with his choices too. So, and I really enjoyed playing with them too. Like the four of us getting together, it was really easy, really effortless.
Aside from Disembodied playing at Hellfest West, anything else you'd like to promote?
No, I don't think so. I think just follow the Disembodied Instagram, for updates and stuff like that on things that are coming. I don't know what else might be happening down the road. We'll see. We're all
No
older now,
recording?
families, careers, all sorts of stuff. We just don't know what's coming. So I'm surprised to be where I am right now with it. So
Yeah.
certainly not making any predictions, but it's been fun so far.
Hopefully
Yeah,
we can get a new recording.
that would be awesome. You never know.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, dude, Mike, this has been a real pleasure. I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been an amazing, engaging, and excellent conversation. And I was so glad that you had agreed to do the show and that you were a fan of the show, actually, because, like I said, I'm a big fan of everything that you have done. And I wish you the absolute best of success with everything that you're doing now with Disembodied and with family life. And I think you're the fucking man, dude. So again, I thank you so much. I want to thank
Thank you.
everybody that joined the show. Um, and as I had mentioned earlier, click on the like button, click on the subscribe button, click on the bell for notifications, comment on the video. Please do all that. And I promoted a bunch of stuff. The Lou, as you can see with the QR code, the Lou collar benefit on GoFundMe. We've got the Come Inside of Me, My Punk Rock Family, Johnny Miami, John Cuccinello. And also, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Music, give us a follow, give us a rating. That would be excellent. And I forgot to mention at the top of the hour, I have a merchandising company, Hell's Heart Merch Company. Go on over to hellsheartco.bigcartel.com. Use code podcast for 20% off your entire order. If you like movies, if you like hardcore, they're really fine Bella Canvas Next Level Tri-Blend t-shirts, and they deal with those themes. Actually, if you're an Apocalypse Now fan, Mike, I've got an Apocalypse Now shirt that's Agro's, the Paris Mayhew Cro-Mags project. You might like it. So I
Nice.
get everybody on the show a shirt, but if you don't mind sticking around for a few minutes, everybody, I want to thank you guys so much for attending the stream. Namaste, jobless, and be good. Thank you so much, Mike.
My
Hell's hard, life's a game. Money, power, the price of fame.